right, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Dollar Bin Digging. This is the video and article that I do for comicbookinvest.com, where I talk about those books you can still probably find tucked away in those cheap boxes, those discount bins, those dollar boxes at your LCS, shopping at your half-price books, your flea markets, your yard sales, wherever you do your cheap comic hunting. I think you can find some of these titles based off of some of the things I've read this week in this week's new release comics. Sometimes it could be about things in the news, rumors, things on TV, etc. This week, I'm focused in mostly on the comics, and I got a short little list for you, so hopefully you enjoy it. But please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see my rundown, just hang out for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, and with that said, let's get right into it and see what we've got related to this week's new release comics. That's right, some new titles came out this week, and inside those books, we ran into some characters that you may be able to find their first appearances out there when you go digging in your, again, flea market, yard sales, wherever this weekend. With that said, let's take a look first on the DC side of things and check out Titans number 27. Yep, Titans is still rolling on, so we got a new release this week. Doom Patrol was guest starring here, but I'm not going to focus so much just on Doom Patrol, but as in this guy right here, this baddie that actually goes back to Garth, Garth's history, his parents' history, Beast Boy. It kind of goes back to there, but the guy I'm talking about is the Zookeeper. He was another scientist working with Garth's dad, and yes, obviously, he ended up being a bad guy. Now, we didn't know it right away when he was first introduced in this comic, which was Teen Titans number 13. This was back in July of 2004. Inside the guts of this book, we're introduced to the character as his dad's like science partner, co-worker, whatever you want to call it. But you see he's kind of a prick. But outside of that, he just seems like a regular old scientist at this stage. So it's more of a cameo, if you will. But this book, you can go out there and find. These Teen Titans books, they are in those cheap boxes, so you can find them very easily. I mean, no one's shopping for them. I got no sales recently, and copies listed, $1.44, $1.99. Yes, a $10 one. Okay, but outside of that, most of them are like $1 or $2. And that's the point. Some of these books are going to be very, very cheap. Not to say they should be expensive, but comics don't always have to be about, all the huge money. Sometimes you just want to find a cool book, cool comic. You get a first appearance for a cheap, get a good read for a cheap price. Do more than just, try to make money off these books. Just have some fun. Sometimes it could just be about having fun and a little bit of a scavenger hunt challenge that I'm giving you to go see if you can find some of these books out there when you're out there, again, flipping through those boxes, looking for those big scores. Now, if we consider this a cameo, and again, I hate playing the semantics of the first appearance game, but people buy what they want to buy. I just want to explain to you what's inside these books so you know what's in there, and you make the decision of how much you want to spend on whether it be a one-panel appearance or a larger chunk of the story, or if they show up on the cover, which he does on neither of these, as here's the first book, but in the next book, we do get a bit of a bigger reveal in issue 14 in August of 2004. And inside this book, continuing the storyline at the end, we do get the big reveal at the end, how the Zookeeper is, more of a big bad. And with that said, this book also not selling recently. I couldn't find any individual sales. You might find it sold in some lots, etc. But individually, $1.79, $2.29, $3.99. It's $1 to $4 at most. In most places, you can find this cheap. So that's what I'm saying. You can find this book if you want to go dig it out. Because who knows how long Zookeeper is going to be around in this story. I mean, it's probably just this one-time appearance. But you can always come back. Yeah, you never know. And with that, staying with DC, we're going to shift from Titans and we're going to go on over to Justice League Red, this oddball Justice League team that Red Tornadoes got put together. And I thought about doing Simon Baz, but I believe we've covered him before, and looking for a free comic book day book isn't that fun. And even after that, you got the Green Lantern Zero. So instead, I decided to shift the focus to Red Canary here, who is in a little spot of trouble here inside this book, and then the team gets kind of upset, and then they got to figure out a way to go rescue her. Now, I know I've also covered her before, but it doesn't hurt to occasionally go back and remind you all of a book that some of you might not have seen that episode of the show. I mean, it could have been months, if not years ago. So with that, let's take a look at Red Canary and her first and show you that she showed up back in that Dark Crisis event. Dark Crisis number 3. Multiple covers on this book. I'm just showing you the one where we get a design cover of her done by Dan Mora, which I didn't know Dan Mora at the time. Now I'm a big fan of his art, and you can see even then, same styling. I like it. This was August of 2022, so all of 3 years ago, and she just basically, even though she gets a cover, out of all the selection of covers, she gets one all of her own. She shows up in just this tiny little bit here. One panel inside this book, really just a tease, as you just see an eyeball. It's really just an eyeball. But it is her. Cameo, call it what you want. She's in the book. She's also on the cover. So with that, this one, recent sales on this, $3, $4, $2. As I showed you, there's the cover A mixed in there as well, just so you can get a kind of context and what to look for. Because I didn't want to show you all the different covers, but there are multiples. And then on the the available side of things, you can see copies listed for $3, $4, almost $6. Again, not an expensive book and one that you can go and find if you decide to go out there digging. But as I said, it's one panel, just of an eyeball. You want more than that? We got to go and check out this book here, which is Dark Crisis, The Dark Army, which came out a couple of months later in November of 2022. And in here, again, she gets a cover option. I showed you that one. There are other covers available for this book where she is not featured as prominently, but I figured since this is the character we're talking about, I'll show her cover out of the options available. But inside the guts of this book, she introduces herself as the Red Canary. Cool, right? Again, also not a pricey book. Copies sold recently, $5.99, $8.99, and that $8.99 was for the 1 in 25 variant, which also features her on the cover. So there you go. Copies listed, $5, $5, $4. It's basically cover price, less in most cases. So this is a $5.99 cover. So all of these are actually under cover price, those asking prices. So that's what we're talking about here. Discounted books that you can go and find featuring first appearances of characters that you might find interesting. Now, before we move on, and again, it's not going to be a long one today. Only got maybe another 4 titles to talk about. But before we get there, any of you out there who need supplies, use my code RENA10 over at BCW to save yourself 10% off your entire order. So you get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, your CGC boxes, top loaders for your cards, pages for cards, basically anything to keep your comics or collectibles safe. You got to get supplies. You can get them at BCW, and if you do, use RENA10 to save 10% off your whole order. You help out the channel, you get yourself a discount. You really got nothing to lose by doing so. So with that, let's keep it rolling and go on over to Marvel and check out some books over there related to some characters we can go digging for. Starting off here with Incredible Hulk number 29, continuing Philip Kennedy Johnson's run here, that horror kind of angle on the Hulk, tying back to Red Harpy. Right there on the cover, you can see she's back, but also inside. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get the panel inside the book. My mistake, I didn't update that. But she's right there on the cover. She's in the guts of this book too. Point being, Red Harpy, who was, his girlfriend Betty, big reveal there. Sorry if I'm spoiling it, but this goes back a few years. Her first appearance goes all the way back to 2019 of April in this cameo. And once again, we'll call it what it is, and I'll show you the panel. You decide for yourself. She was really slowly played and slowly introduced into this storyline before she featured on the cover. But with that said, this is issue 16. Alex Ross, excellent cover. She's got one panel in here, and it's just kind of a tease. It's a big shot, mind you. It's not like a tiny little reveal. It's a big panel, but it's still just the back of her kind of hovering there as they're teasing this appearance and introduction. So call it a cameo. Call it what it is. This book does feature her, unnamed, there in the background. Sells for $4, $5. Asking prices $2.50, $3, $3.99. Again, cover price and less. First cameo of Red Harpy, if you will. And get a little bit more 2 months later. So that was 16. 18, another great Ross cover there featuring the Hulk. You get what some call her first full, as she gets a little bit more into the story. Again, it's only like a page with a few panels worth, but it's kind of, again, slowly introducing her. There we get a little bit more of the Red Harpy. So with that, more panels, bigger reveal. You get at least see her face. This one, a little bit kind of on the same page as far as pricing goes. $2.99, $5, $8. Okay. Asking prices, $2.99, $4, $3.99. See what I'm talking about here. And you guys all know eventually she does show up on the cover, and a cover by Alex Ross. And that was the book everybody jumped at. But as you can see here, she was teased and slowly released into the book before that cover appearance, which I think was closer to like 20. I don't know if it was on 19 or if it was on 20, but she did show up soon after this on a cover. And that's the book that everybody went, ooh, who is this? Who is this character? But with that said, let's move on to another new release from Marvel this week. This being Runaways #4, connected to One World Under Doom. I'm just waiting for that event to end. It's just been going on for, it feels like a year now. It's just too long. It's just too drawn out at this point for me. I'm just over it. But some of these stories are still kind of fun. Runaways, you know, it's been a while. I haven't really read many Runaways titles in a while. I do remember the OG squad, and I did like the original run. Even the second volume wasn't bad, and we're going to tie into the second volume. But first, looking at, which I think this is like the fifth or maybe even sixth volume of Runaways at this point. Issue 4, inside this book, some of the members of the team that maybe newer. We're not going back to the first squad, but as I mentioned, with that second volume in 2005 of Victor. So Victor right here, who was also, was it the son of Ultron? Victor Mancha showed up here in that the first issue of the second volume on Runaways. So it's Runaways #1, but not the #1. This is the second volume #1 from 2005. So you might think, oh man, it's the #1. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to find, and it's gonna be pricey. It's not. It definitely is not. But inside here, just start kicking off the story. You get the bigger reveal of who he is eventually, but he's right there, right from the start. Right, right from jump of this storyline, you get Victor. With that said, this book is cheap. Look, $3, $1.50. Asking prices $2, $3, $4. Not pricey at all. One you can definitely find if you want to go and search for it. But with that said, another little member of this squad of Runaways. Again, not going to the OGs because they all go back to like Runaways #1, etc. But this little guy over here, and we're not talking about the Doombot either, because Doombot's not part of the team. So, Nico and Gert and Princess Power, etc., they go back to the first issue. So we're not going to worry about them. But this little guy here, this little, I guess it's alien. I guess that's what they were. It's kind of convoluted with the whole pride and then them sacrificing to these gods to get power and the power of these aliens. And this one of these aliens is Gib, the Gibberum was what they were. There were 3 of them. He's the one that remained. They were all introduced to us in another volume of Runaways. This was number 13 from 2018. I want to say this is volume like 3 or 4. It's somewhere in there. But in this book, we do get the Gibborum, and they're talking about the pride that, oh, they finally found him, and this Gib character who can alter his appearance and all that stuff is also a part of this crew. So while the other 2 have disappeared into another dimension, I think at this point, Gib is with the team. And again, this is a book that hasn't sold recently. I couldn't find any recent sales, and copies listed are 4 or 5. Look, that one's up to $9. I mean, that's kind of impressive. I was actually surprised by that. But it's a book you can find. And they're not even listing it as the first appearance of anybody. It's just a Runaways book. But it is the first for Gib. Anyway, that's another one you could find. We're still sticking with Marvel, but we're shifting away from the MCU and going over to Star Wars for a minute. I know it's been a while since we talked about a Star Wars book, but Star Wars is continuing with stories after Return of the Jedi. So here we go. And right there in the cover, you see a guy that, yes, we've talked about him before, but let's not forget him. That's Valance. So although he's on the cover, he's also inside the guts of this book right over here with Luke and Han. And we're talking about Baylor Valance. And he, as being like a cyborg Terminator type character, got a lot of play in these newer Star Wars comic books. As you can see, he's getting included in a lot of the current storylines here. But he did show up way, way back in 1978 in issue 16. Multiple versions of this book. You can find Whitman's. You can find the barcode for newsstands. You can find I think the Whitman's have nothing in there, so it's an empty white box. Multiple ways for you to find this book, and you can find this one out there. July 1978. Yes, it got hot a couple of times, but by and large, you can still find a lot of these old Star Wars books. Maybe not in the best shape, but you can pretty much find them for cheap. And although he's on the cover as the hunter, he's also right there at the start of the storyline from panel 1 throughout the book. So no confusion over what this is. This is the first, hunter who ends up being Baylor Valance. Copies have sold recently, $5, $12. Okay, so it is a little bit more than your $1 or $2 books, but you still never know what you might find in those dollar bins. So go digging in those cheap boxes. Copies listed $7, $12, highest $15 still. Who knows? But with that, let's go one more book. Going to shift away from Marvel, shift away from DC, go over to Image, Energon, and let's take a look at G.I. Joe this week. So with that, we've got G.I. Joe 11 coming out this week. Major Blood, Baroness fighting it out right there on the cover. And let's not forget some of these characters inside the guts of this book, and the fact that we can probably go and dig for their first appearances throughout that OG original G.I. Joe Real American Hero run. Starting off with Major Blood right here. Yes, I know a lot of them have gotten pricey over the last couple of years. Your first Dukes, your first Destros, etc. Some of these don't go for as much as you might think and are a little bit later in the run, like Major Blood, who, again, goes back pretty far, but not to the beginning. We can go to issue 15, I believe, for his first appearance. So, June of 1983, not featured on the cover. There's Snake Eyes, but in one little panel, well, actually, these 3 panels, we get introduced to Major Blood. And yes, I see what he's doing, but he's hailing Cobra. It is what it is. But Major Blood hanging out, talking with Cobra Commander. There's his introduction before he continues on with the storyline from here. But this is issue 15, which, like I said, doesn't go for as much as you might think. Yeah, some copies can go for $20, but copies can still sell for as cheap as like $7. Best offer on 15. Copies listed, well, 13, 15, 30. You never know. You can get lucky, and that's also kind of the point, because this isn't something that screams first Major Blood when you look at the cover. So that's another reason why I want to tell you what it is, so you remember this cover and know that there is something inside of it, even if you can't quite remember what it is at the time. Maybe that'll help. So with that said, also in this current issue, we get this little fight here between these two, and we're also going to look at these two, and that's CoverGirl and Raptor. We're going to start with CoverGirl, who's right there on the back of Raptor, because she shows up first in the OG run in the actual next issue, or what we were just talking about, Major Blood. So here's CoverGirl, got a revamp throughout the years. She used to be this weird little old brunette. She kind of had a mom look to her, but then they kind of changed her vibe, made her a blonde, looks more like the fashion model you might expect, because the 80s look, like, again, it's a little dated. You'll see in a second. But she got a little bit of a look upgrade, I guess. A little bit of a change, update. This is from 1983 as well, issue 16. Like I said, following up that last book with Major Blood, we now get introduced to CoverGirl here. Riding with this little missile launcher tank thing. Look at that hair. I mean, it's something. Checking her nails. Very, very stereotyped at the time. I mean, it is what it is. This is the early 80s. Toy line turned into a comic book. You're not going to get Shakespeare here, so the characterization is pretty one note. But it is what it is. They've developed the character throughout the years, and you got a little bit more with CoverGirl, along with the little update to her appearance. But this book, again, much like the last, issue 16, doesn't sell for a ton, and you can probably find it. Look, $4, $6, highest $10. Copies listed, 99 cents. There's one actually, a buy it now for 99 cents. That's $1 book. $3, $10. Condition, could be all over the place, but that's the point. It's not an expensive book. It's a first. It's one you can go and grab for, even online, for $1. Just saying. But there you have CoverGirl. One more to kind of wrap us up here. We'll go back and talk about Raptor. Yeah, the bird dude. And I get it. In the comic here, they're giving him more of the Vulture style. Like there's wind turbines. It's all technological, just like in the Spider-Man movie. Back in the day, he just had wings like Hawkman and just like Vulture. We just had to use our imagination of how these dudes flew with just putting wings on them. Because here's Raptor today, old school Raptor then. Yeah, it looked like he was just wearing a bird outfit. He looked like Birdman from Rick and Morty. But there's Raptor. He was actually a pretty cool figure, though. I will admit, as goofy as the idea is, he's right there on the cover of his first, though. Look at that. Just the wings, just out there going. So this is 1987, issue 59 of that Real American Hero run. Very bright yellow cover. You got Cobra Commander in the armor at this time. Tunnel Rat. A lot of stuff going on. But you can still find these. You can find these for pretty cheap. And there's our Raptor right there, just with his little talons and claws and his feathers. Yep. And he flew. With that said, and he also had a little pet bird too. I forget, it might have been just named Talon? I can't remember, but kind of like Eagly. With that, this book out there, $1.25, $1.79, recent sales, $6.30, copies listed, $4, $6, $12. Yeah, kind of all over the place, but that's kind of the point. Who knows what you might find if you go out there digging. But these are some fun books I think you can still find. And let me know if you do in the comments. Let me know down below. Tag me on Instagram. I love to see when you guys find books and love to know what you guys are picking up. But with that said, that's all I got for you this week. That's my little bit of a rundown on some of the things based off of the comics this week. So let me know again what you think down below. And with that, I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.